Morning and
So we're going to start Sefer Shoftim. Now, I think all of you have access to the Sefer Bigdei Shesh on Shoftim, my Sefer on Shoftim. I'm not going to use it this evening, at least not at first, but eventually, if we continue this year, so then I appreciate if you actually bring yours to class, so to speak, and we can use it in order to learn what I said. So, but we'll start with the psukim themselves. Mos Yoshua. Happened after the death of Yoshua, Bashum Neso Bashem Limor. But Neso asked Hashem, Mi Alelonu Aknani Betchilo Yilachim Bo. Who's going to go up for us first to the Canaanim to fight? Now, so Malbim in most of Sefer Nach, he has questions, and of course, then he gives the answers in the commentary. There's the She'elos and the Shoftim, which is the longer commentary where he addresses and goes beyond the questions. So the first questions he has are in Pasuk Aleph through Gimel. So the first question he has is Lama lo shaluzos aratami ola betchila. And this we have to. He's going to go back to Sefer Yoshua. Obviously, Yoshua never completed the conquest of Eretz Canaan. As a matter of fact, as we shall see in the first paragraph of Shoftim, the Jewish people themselves never, ever completed the conquest. The Canaanim thrived alongside the Jews, despite the warning countless times in the Torah that Hashem gave that they have to eradicate, they have to eliminate, they have to boot out, in whichever way they can, the Canaanim from Eretz Yisrael. So it never happened. The entire period of Shoftim indicates is therefore one big, massive failure with some bright spots of light in the middle, because they were constantly at war, because the Canaanim were left there, and later on, the great arch enemy of the Jews emerged on the scene at the time, the Plishtim. But in the meantime, we start with the Canaanim. So they ask who's going to go up, but who's going to go? And what do you mean with Tchila? They already started. There's Yoshua, so obviously there must be some new Tchila here that actually is going to be the a new stage in the fight against Canaan. And Vayomer Hashem said, Yehuda should go first. I gave land over to him. And Yehuda says astonishing thing. Obviously, it's not about a person, Yehuda, to about Shevet Yehuda. Yehuda says astonishing thing. Yehuda says to Shimon's brother, come up with me in my portion, and we'll fight against Canaan. I'm going to go up with your portion as well. Shimon and Shimon went together. So Yehuda and Shimon go together. Yehuda was always destined to be the leader of the Jewish people. But here, he says, I want Shimon to come with me specifically. Why Shimon? So that's the question. Second question, Malbim. So Malbim says, in the days of Yeshua, they didn't have to ask Urim V'Tumim. Now, the way they asked Hashem questions like this, they had two options. One was to ask a Navi, and the other was to ask the Urim V'Tumim. The Urim V'Tumim was the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, which one had a special scroll, which had writing of with which we are not familiar, inside the folds of that special breastplate. Then the letters would illuminate and give a message. So they didn't have to ask the Urim V'Tumim what to do at the time Yoshua. Yoshua see there called Piti B'Hashem. Yoshua arranged everything according to what Hashem told him directly. Chazal said, it says that Yoshua was told actually that he would be able to ask the questions of the Urim V'Tumim. That's what it means. He should stand in front of Elazar, the Kohen Gadol, after the death of his father Aaron. So he would have been able to ask Urim V'Tumim questions, but it was not necessary. We didn't find ever that Yoshua had to ask Elazar questions. But when he died, they had to ask Urim V'Tumim the following questions. Aleph, who's going to go? In the days of Yoshua, he was the leader. Matzbi comes the language of Tzava, army. He was the leader of the army of the Jewish people. Now they asked who's going to go first. Initially, all of them conquered together. And now things changed dramatically. Now each Shevet conquered its own area. In other words, till now there was a unity. among all the Shvatim, and they all fought together in one army. And now it's not going to work like that anymore. Now each Shevet is responsible for its own area. It's got to conquer the Cana'anim in its own area, and as we shall see, this is not a simple matter at all. So, so the Kamashkaza says, "Anochi Arishem Rakha Benachala." When Yoshua said, I'm going to bequeath, distribute the land, I'm only distributing the map. I'm going to make a map where every Shevet should go. But I'm not going to actually be able to complete the conquest. It just wasn't practical. It was too much to conquer. So therefore, Yehoshua said, I can't complete this. I'm going to have to leave for after my death. Therefore, they asked, who's going to conquer first? If the first conquest was not going to be successful, the Canaanites would say, with the death of Yehoshua, the strength of the Jews was sapped. They no longer have the strength to wage war. So it's critical that the first battle, which is waged, is going to be a successful battle. And since they're in each tribe's portion, they were nations should not be conquered. It's going to tell here how they fought with them. So we said, Yehuda Yale. Yehuda should go. Female also, because Yehuda was the leader among the Shvatim. Also, evidently, as they distributed the land, they distributed portion by portion, and Yehuda got his portion first. Now, this is an important thing to remember, and I think people make a mistake throughout the entire course of history. Shimon did not have an independent portion in Eretz Yisrael. Shimon's portion in Eretz Yisrael was part of Shevet Yehuda. There was a portion of Shevet Yehuda which was allocated to Shimon, but it really was a part of Yehuda. And this was part of Shimon's punishment for their devastating sin, for leading the Jews in the Maisa and Shittim, where the Jews and the women of Midian had those very bad relationships, which Pinchas had to get up eventually and to Mekane Kinas Hashem and be zealous in the name of God. So as a result, Shimon was not given their own portion. There's a flip side to this, which is, again, as I said, never mentioned. I don't know why, except by me and few other people, is that Shimon, they never went to Golus. When we talk about the 10 Shvatim going to Golus, it doesn't include Shevet Shimon. Because Shevet Shimon was part of Yehuda. And if Yehuda didn't go to Golus, so Shimon didn't go to Golus. Yehuda didn't go to Golus, Binyamin didn't go to Golus, and Shimon didn't go to Golus because Shimon was part of Yehuda. The 10 Shvatim which went into Golus were all the other ones, including Ephraim and Menashe and Levi, which makes a total of 10, because we really have 13 Shvatim, right? But and part of the Malbim went into Golus, part of the Malbim stayed, and we had then Ruvain, Levi, and so on and so forth until you get up to all 10 Shvatim. So it was really 3 Shvatim: Shimon, Yehuda, and Binyamin never went to Golus, and parts of Levi. And the other ones who went to Golus, because Shimon was part of Yehuda. That's what he says here. Go up with me to conquer my portion. And it's possible that Yehuda had to go up, is just the Malbim surmise, his suggestion, that Yehuda had to go up and conquer in the mountainside. And so he said, come up with me. The Shimon and Shimon had to conquer a plain, not a high ground. I'm going to go with you. But come with me, and I will go with you. Later on, it says in Pasuk Yitzhak, Yehuda went with Shimon, his brother. Now, I even though I didn't tell you in time to take to come up with the bring your Bigdei Shesh. Do you guys have your Bigdei Shesh is relatively handy? Shoftim? As I gave you?
Yeah, I do.
If you give you a minute.
Yeah, I have a minute.
Okay, so go get it. Pause here for a second, and I'll give you a minute to go get it. So on page Aleph, you have somewhere I have a PDF of it. I wasn't able to find it before this year. Aleinu Ladas, we have to know Shekol Milchama, every war, Sheben Am Yisrael B'Soneim, and between Am Yisrael and their enemies, Hamus Keres B'Tanach, which is mentioned in Tanach, Einam Milchama Gashmis Greda. And this is true, not just in Tanach. It's true very often throughout Jewish history. When we wage war against the enemy, it's not just a physical war, it's also a spiritual war. And the war against the Arabs now in Gaza is a primary example of that. As I mentioned, I think in class, Arabs have a certain schus. The schus they have is that they're from Yishmael, and Yishmael has a power of tefillah. And that's why they're called Yishmael, Yishmael. Hashem listens to them. And that's why they daven 5 times a day, and they daven to Allah, which is Elohim, which is God. So they have a special power of tefillah. There is a spiritual battle against the Arabs. They also happen to be bad people, even though they daven very well, but they are bad people, and they are spiritually negative. But each and every enemy throughout Jewish history, especially those in Tanakh, were ones who were not just physical enemies, but spiritual enemies. And it's Kim Milchama. Every war is ruchanis, rayanis, is spiritual and ideological. The Shita Absula against the negative approach. Osa Uma Halochemes Negdem Yatzeges, that nation which is fighting against us represents. So Bnei Yisrael can Sholim as Hashem. Here the Jews are asking Hashem, Mi Mishitem, who from their tribes, who Achim Sugal is most suitable, to conduct the spiritual war against the Canaanite approach. Always throughout Jewish history, Yehuda was destined to lead the nation. And in fact, he got this trait from the time that he proved his humility and he confessed that Tamar's children were his children. From that time, he was destined to be the king over the Jews. In other words, the king in Judaism, lots of people can be arrogant and warlike, but to be able to also be humble, that was unique, and that was Yehuda's trait, and Yehuda therefore zochem to Malchus. And therefore he stood at the head of his brothers, even when they went out of Mitzrayim, when they met Yosef. And Yaakov said, I tell you, your brothers were going to concede to you that you should be the head. So it was natural, and it could be predicted that when they asked the Urim Tumim who should be in charge, it's going to come out to be Yehuda. So I said, I don't remember who told me this. Whenever I quoted somebody in my Sefer, and I wasn't sure he wanted to be quoted by name, I wrote Chacham Echad. So I don't remember who these Chachamim were. So this Chacham Echad said to me, he says, Zos V'od, he said, also this is important. Yehuda Zochel Malchus, another reason given for why Yehuda was Zochel Malchus, is because Tamar was very tzanua. Tamar was very modest. And therefore, Yehuda didn't recognize her because she was very modest and she always was didn't reveal herself in her father-in-law's house while she lived there. Al-Kenim Tzayimbo Kochos, Lilchom Neged, Masei Eretz Cana'an, Mufuratim and Vayikra Perak Yutes. This past Parshas Akrimos, at the end of the Parsha, Perak is at the end of the Parsha, it says, what are the traits of the Canaanites which we have to avoid? So the main traits of Canaanites we have to avoid, almost all of them are arayos, except for one, which is Molech. But the other ones are all arayos. And it's obviously the idea of Canaan was great priestess. They had their goddesses, which were goddesses of priestess, of inappropriate behavior, and they were themselves behaving inappropriately in matters between men and women. So therefore, if we need somebody spiritually appropriate to fight this battle, Yehuda is best one to take. Because Yehuda has the leadership of Yehuda comes from Tamar, who had this special tznius about her. And here actually began Yehuda's role as leader. Until now was Moshe, who's from Shevet Levi, and then Yeshua from Shevet Ephraim. And now it's Yehuda who takes charge. And that's what the Medrash Rabbah says. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi were the leaders in Egypt. Mace Levi, when Levi died, Bigdei says throw Yehuda. They wanted, when Levi died, Levi was the last of the Shoftim to die in Mitzrayim. They wanted to give the leadership to Yehuda at that point in time. Yosef Baskol, a voice came out and said, Ramalahem said, wait, it's not Yehuda's time yet. Like it says in the following pasuk, Yom Hashem Yehuda Yaleh. And by the way, this is interesting because also it repeated much later in Jewish history. This repeats itself when they actually come to appoint a king. So the first king is not from Yehuda. The first king is from Binyamin, Shaul. So it seems, for reasons we'll get into later, that somebody from the children of Rachel has to come first, even though Yehuda, from the children of Leah, is supposed to be the main governmental force in Am Yisrael. And evidently, there are many reasons for that. A simple reason is because Rachel was the Akeres Abayis. She was the primary wife. So since she was the primary wife, so therefore, she has first rights. And then it should go on to Leah afterwards. But that's a very simple explanation. We're going to see much deeper explanations later on. Okay, so then, turning to page Yud Beis, Hashem says Yehuda should go up, and Yehuda says to Shimon. So says Bigdei Shesh. Gorolo, the destiny. Tarte Mashma, not just destiny, but also the Goro means the land in Eretz Yisrael. The destiny and land in Eretz Yisrael, Yehuda Kashuba Gorolo of Shimon, is inextricably linked to the Gorolo of Shimon. This point was very reflected in Parshas Zos HaBracha, where Chazal, Malbim Masora, they teach us, even though despite on account of the sin which we mentioned, Ma'aseh Shitim, Nimna Moshe Rabbeinu Lava Shalom Baruch Shevet Shimon Meferush. Moshe Rabbeinu did not give Shimon an explicit bracha. He was the only one of the Shvatim was left out of the brachas of Moshe. But Chozos, nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu hinted at a bracha to Shimon within the bracha of Yehuda. It says, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Listen, Hashem, to the voice of Yehuda. The Shema represents the statement of Shimon. And we're going to get into that. And it's a fascinating thing, which I don't know if anybody ever speaks about it. But I pointing out here. Sha'apa Talmud, even the Gemara. The main antagonists in the Gemara, the people always argue in the Mishnah. People always argue with each other in the Mishnah. Who are they? Hematznoim, Rabbi Shim, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shim and Yehuda always argue with each other in the Mishnahs. They're always inextricably linked with each other. They're always engaged with each other. Alodavru, there's something there, some connection between Shimon and Yehuda. Now this seems to be a problem. L'chayra would seem Harei Midah Shimon, the Midah of Shimon, who Midah of Chis B'diuk, is the exact opposite Midah. Mina Midah and Chutza from the Midah which is necessary l'chom b'yoshei Eretz Cana'an to fight against those who live in Eretz Cana'an. Because Harei Asiba l'Uvda, the cause of the fact Shelo Kibel Shimon es bracha, that Shimon didn't get the bracha, was Kishlono, his failure, Anora, the terrible failure, B'cheta Erva, with the sin of Arayos, Ma'aseh Shitim, when they had these inappropriate relationships with the daughters of Midian. So they're no good for this purpose. How can they go fight spiritually the people of Eretz Canaan if they're the ones who created who had the biggest sin of inappropriate behavior with the women of Midian? It would seem that they're the exact wrong choice. Yehuda's looking for an ally in this battle. Shimon seems to be the totally wrong one to choose. So, in this area, Shevet Shimon is very weak. How now he's going to confront im umos, these nations shekochen dafka bekach, whose koch is specifically in their tremendous inappropriate illicit behavior. So this is a fundamental principle in Kabbalah, which is in a place where a person is most likely to sin. There he also has the capacity to be the greatest in uplifting himself. In other words, if a person has terrific potential for bad, and that same thing has terrific potential for good. If you don't have such great potential for bad, you don't have such great potential to be good either. If you have great potential to be bad, you have great potential to be good. In a specific area, you don't have such great potential. Another area you have great potential. So the area of great potential is one in which it can go either way. They can all go either way. But it's like a bow and arrow, right? When you draw it back, you can shoot far farther. The farther you can draw it back, the more you can shoot ahead. So therefore, the further you can fall, the further you can rise. If you only fall a little bit, you can't rise so much. If you fall a lot, you can rise a lot too. So, Barei came with Shimon Gufa. And this we find in Shimon himself. Ava Shevet Huzeh, that the father of Shevet Shimon himself, who's Shekavash Roda Shechem. He's the one who conquered and subjugated Shechem. Ekem Maaseh Zimah, because of the inappropriate behavior, which the prince of the city did against his sister, which Shechem ben Chamor did against Dinah. Why does Shimon have this capacity if they use their strength the right way? Because remember I spoke a few minutes about Yishmael, right? Shmakel. Shimon is the same source. Shimon, right? To listen. Moshe Rabbeinu of Hashem b'bracha so as we are now. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu shows us in his hidden bracha to Shimon. Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. Leah herself, when she gave the name to Shimon, she said, Ki shama Hashem. Hashem listened. That I was hated. So she gave me also this son and called his name Shimon, because Hashem listened. Shimon, on our page of Gimel, the power of listening, which Shimon has, Mizbatei, is expressed b'tzura boletes, in a very powerful way, in a very dramatic way, ba'ovda, in the fact, Shemisha Shamabi Yosef B'nai Misha Torah, who heard to the greatest extent the inner voice of the Torah. Hatana Hanau, the Tana we just mentioned. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai represents us listening at the deepest level to what the Torah has to say to us. And it's called Shema. To listen on the deepest level. Ma'akol Pnimi. What is this inner voice, which Shimon represents, which Shimon can hear? Mevayer Reb Tzar Cohen explains. If Shimon does the right thing, they go the right way, and to a large extent, by being affiliated with Yehuda is going to keep them on the right path. It's the ultimate difference between the nations of the world and us is represented in Shimon. And that's why he is linked to Yehuda, which is the ultimate. Also, Yehuda represents the ultimate separation. All Jews are called Yehudim. First Megillah explains, we call a kofar b'avodah zara nikra Yehudi. Anybody who denies avodah zara is called Yehudi. So Yehudi is Yud K Hodah. They confess to Hashem, not to anybody else. Uveshimon ha'avdala od yoser. And with Shimon, the separation is even greater if Shimon does the right thing. Moshe Elasi, like it's going to be in the mentioned future. Hashem badad yanchenu, when Hashem is going to make us alone and supreme, and no other powers are going to affect us. Therefore, he is the primary person who took the revenge with Dinah and the one who killed Shem. So the idea is that Shimon, as like a Shimon Chai, he hears the inner voice of the Torah, which is what separates us from the nations of the world. Because anybody can learn Torah, right? Even non-Jews can learn Torah. But to hear the depths of the Torah, that's something which Rabbi Shimon Yochai represents, that's something Shevet Shimon represents. So therefore, what Shevet Shimon represents to us is the capacity to separate from bad influences from the non-Jews. And Yehuda knows he has this power, but he wants to fortify it. So he takes Shimon, who now they've done tshuva on the Ma'aseh Shittim, and they're no longer involved in this terrible behavior. They're involved in the midbar. They have this great capacity to help out in being able to overcome the negative power of the Canaanites. So again, Yehuda and Shimon go to war together because Yehuda and Shimon represent our separation from the non-Jews. A separation from the negative traits of non-Jews. So of course, it's supposed to influence the non-Jews positively, but we have to separate ourselves from their negative traits. So therefore, Hashem says, but Hashem told them through the Urim and Tumim, Yehuda and Shimon should be the ones to lead the battle. Okay, I'm going to skip the rest of my what I wrote here. Perhaps we'll come back to it at some point. But let's go now to the next pasuk. It's the pasuk Dalet. Says here, Vayal Yehuda. Yehuda went up. So Yehuda was successful. As we're going to see later, the other Shvatim were not so successful. They were successful. They went up, and the Cana'an Prizi, two nations in the area, were given over to them. And they smote them in Bezek. I love that place. And Bezek, and we're going to speak more about the meaning of the place. Aseres Alafimish. They killed 10,000 Canaanites in Bezek. And here they're going to find just reading Pasuk Adoni Bezek Bezek. They found Adoni Bezek, the king of Bezek in Bezek. They fought him. Vayaku as a Canaan, they smote the Canaanites and the Prizites. So it's very strange because it's very repetitive. It says, and they hid him in Bezek. And then they found Adoni Bezek, fought him. And then by again, they smote the Canaanite and Priestite. So why go back again? Tells us he already told it to us. Okay, so that's Malbim asked the question. He says here, you already told us they beat the Canaan. And then you tell me, and then they got Bezek and Adoni Bezek. And then they beat the Canaan. I have to repeat yourself. So he says here, Vayakum Bezek. Initially, the camps went out with their officers for Bezek, and they camped around Bezek. And then they killed 10,000 people. When it says Vayakum Bezek, was me in Bezek, in the Bezek, in the environs around Bezek. Just like it says by Yeshua, he was in Yericho, means he was around Yericho. Adoni Bezek Harishon Milara. Actually, you know what? Let's skip this diktuk. I don't want to do diktuk. What he does say, I'll tell you what he says. It says, it says here, Adoni Bezek, and it says over here, Adoni Bezek. Different emphasis. So it says, first is called Adoni Bezek. He was the master Bezek. And that's his name. It's just Adoni Bezek, because it's not no longer the master, but he was still called Adoni. Well, that's a diktuk issue. Let's not get confused by it. So then when they came to conquer the little city itself, Shamatus Adoni Bezek. They found Adoni Bezek, but he remained in the city to fight for it, based on when they would come close. Velasa Kamelech Ai, it wasn't like King of Ai and Sefer Shoftim had seminary year, who left the city, was here Besucha, left the city open. Vayilach Mubo, Shenis. So first they had fought around the city. There they killed 10,000 people. Then they came into the city and they fought against Adoni Bezek directly. Shamiku Shenis Kanani, and then they again beat the Canaanites, Shnistagru Ba'ir L'Saibri, who had closed themselves up in the city. And now, so that's why I said it twice. First they got killed the Canaanite who came around, who were fighting around the city. Then they came into the city and they fought against Adoni Bezek, the king, with his remaining forces. And then they conquered them, and they actually conquered the Cana'an priests who were still inside the city. Now, I'm going to leave. We're going to stop here for tonight. What they do to Adoni Bezek is so fascinating. And it's a remarkable thing, which we're going to learn next week. So, Kim, the relationship and why they did to Adoni Bezek, what they did to Adoni Bezek. But again, I'm afraid with Zoom that anytime in the next 2 minutes they will cut me off unilaterally. So therefore, we'll stop here for today. Please remember, when we learn next week, to bring your Bigdei Shesh with you. Yirat Hashem, see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Thank you.
Have a night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.